Hello, everybody. Welcome to Alpha Book Club. Should I be doing this in a Southern accent because of the book that we're talking about?
Hell yeah.
Oh, boy, Maude. Oh, man, you've got a lot to learn. It's more like this. I'm Hector Navarro, and with me, oh, boy. Just got to get this out of the way because it's a powerful heat today here in Los Angeles. It's powerful hot. And with me is Geek Bomb's Maude Garrett, ladies and gentlemen.
Could
Give
you
it up
please
for
call
Maude.
me Miss Maude?
Miss Maude Garrett is
Miss Maude
here.
Garrett, the only time my name can
Lord.
have any actual good and positive effect.
That's right, Lord.
I feel like I'm a president from a little while ago now, but I am out of my depth.
And everyone regrets picking this book.
That's the aim.
Because that's what we're going to be the whole
You
time.
suggested it!
I did. Oh, it's my fault. I'm the worst. People backstage, don't do that. Don't move that. We positioned everything. Don't do that. Okay, guys. Rachel Hine is currently, Rachel's trying to, just ripped. You got the Madonna arms. Rachel is currently trying to put together pages of a library book that some sheep ate. This is a Beauty and the Beast reference because we love and miss her. What is that? I don't, oh, okay, I don't remember now. That's a good reference. That's a good reference.
That's too expensive. Sorry.
That's fantastic. Welcome to you, Maude, and we'll miss you, Rachel. We'll see you next week. How are you doing, Maude? How are you doing?
I've got Beauty and the Beast in my head now, and it's not going to go away until I finish the entire song.
Fantastic. And let me know when you're done with that. And, of course, welcome to our Alpha community. We love chatting with all of you guys, and we cannot wait to start our next book. So, big what's up to everybody. A lot of people excited to talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel like a lot of people...
Who is excited?
I know a lot. I was getting hit up on Twitter a lot because it's like first of all, it's an American classic, and it was a lot of people's mandatory high school reading. Not mine. I'd never read it. This is why I suggested it. And I think that that's so interesting that it was it's like a mandatory high school reading. So we're going to get into that.
Mandatory in my high school as well, which.
And you went to high school where?
In Australia.
In Australia. What the F? What? How? Why? Huh?
Why couldn't we do? You know what? I want to recommend Ned Kelly.
Yeah, do that. Is that an Australian thing?
He's the Australian Jesse James.
Perfect. We'll do Ned Kelly. But here's some background on To Kill a Mockingbird. It was written by Harper Lee, who is a woman, which is fantastic. It was published in 1960. The book deals with many timeless themes like bullying, racism, sexism, ageism, classism, tolerance, loss of innocence. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a coming-of-age tale.
Yeah.
It is a Southern Gothic aesthetic. And again, I got into that accent because I read this and for better and for worse, it feels like I'm reading this in the South. Okay. It feels like it has the pace of the American South. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And confession, I think I may have mentioned this before, but I have read all of the True Blood series by Charlene Harris.
Okay, cool.
And I read that entire the whole books, all of them.
In this voice.
In an accent.
Yeah.
And I speed read as well, so it'd be like this tiny little snippets of the Southern accent, but that's how I would read it.
And you can't spead read To Kill a Mockingbird. You can't.
Absolutely not. And I'm really struggling with it.
Because of how she sets it up, because of her writing, and we can get into it. But I think it so perfectly describes it's not jarring. I wouldn't say that it's jarring, but it's a writing that forces you to pay attention.
It's unfamiliar for me.
Really?
The use of words, the sentence structure, how y'all talked back then.
Some of the slang or some of the euphemisms,
really,
absolutely.
And
the
like
apostrophes.
There's a few double negatives, like I shan't not do that, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Hold on.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
It's a beautiful language, and then that sort of I really enjoy that. And I'm actually also, I don't know if you guys are at home doing this as well, but we have to talk about the movie, the American classic To Kill a Mockingbird. Gregory Peck, one of the greatest movies of all time, considered a masterpiece.
I'm going to have to watch the movie before I can continue more with the book.
I watched it for the first time a few months ago.
Got it.
And yes.
What's that scenario?
Missed it. Absolutely missed it. And it was fantastic. It really is
the movie?
Yeah, it really is a timeless.
Watching this movie?
No, I didn't.
How did you fall into watching this?
This is what happened. I'll give you the background. My roommate and very good dear friend, Keller Knobloch. Keller, who is has.
I'm sorry. What's the last name?
Knobloch. It sounds dirty. Lock. Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't do that.
Let your imagination run wild with that one, Miss Maude.
You've got to be safe.
But my buddy Keller, he loves this book and loves this film.
Lock?
Yeah. Oh, he's going to get a real big kick out of that. We have to bring him on the show now for that. We have to bring him on the show just so that Maude can laugh at his name.
I'm sure someone in the world's going, Garrett. Which is totally fair.
Nobody's doing that. But people do that to Knobloch. It's fine. You're fine.
Knobloch! I know who I identify with.
Yep.
Scout.
Yep.
Fight me.
You're definitely, oh, you're a big time scout. But my buddy Keller is a huge fan of this film, and this is his favorite book of all time. And he's a big reader, and I'm getting a lot of recommendations from him for just novels and books and everything, and film, because he's like a student of film, and I just like superhero crap. So I'm getting him to tell me what movies are great. Maude, do you want to share something with the rest of the class?
No, I'm like...
That's it, just that. You didn't read anything in the chat. You didn't think of anything new. That's very impressive. Yeah.
I'm going through decades of his
You think that's bad? His first name is Keller, and for a big period of his childhood, he lived in Keller, Texas. So people were like, but was not named for that place, but just ended up living there.
I need this because my name is Maude, now Maude, and like I feel a shit run with my name.
What's wrong with Maude?
Miss Maude in this book is the only real time it's come up in any pop culture.
That's not true. Harold and Maude.
That's true.
That's a classic comedic film
that
inspired an entire like branch of live comedy here in Los Angeles. Can we make it to? You think that's bad? How many famous Hectors are there? How many Hectors are there in popular culture? You know what famous Hectors are?
Chat.
The janitors in like Topher Grace movies. That's who the famous Hectors are in movies. That's it. I've got the dog from Sylvester and Tweety that nobody remembers. His name is Hector. I've got Chef Boyardee. Like that fucking matters. That doesn't count. That doesn't count. Exactly. And then I've got Hector, played by Eric Bana from the movie Troy. Those are the only famous Hectors I've got.
Hector.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Eric Bana, Australian.
I know.
Approved.
Yes, there we go. So that's our connection, but that's it. Yeah, of course, that's another reason I'm fascinated with names too.
Yeah.
Because I don't have options in mind and I don't have any famous ones.
I'm wondering if Keller has done anything, especially in his college years, that made him live up to his name.
Probably.
I'm moving on.
He's got stories. You got to meet him then. You got to meet him. All right, I have to set that up.
Oh, the man, the myth, the legend.
So
never mention people's last names when you're talking about them.
I always do. It's because I read comic books, and in comic books and comic book movies, characters always introduce themselves like, I'm Peter Parker. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. What's your name? Aren't you Gwen? Yeah, Gwen Stacy. Who cares? I don't care about your last name. Why are you telling me that? All right, whatever.
Your name is such a good superhero kind of name.
No, it's not.
Hector Navarro is, oh my gosh.
So?
Yes, you're made for broadcast, you're made for radio.
Ooh, I like that. That's very nice.
I had a job on radio for like 4 years, and here I'm going, hey, I'm Maude Garrett.
What's wrong with that?
Maude Garrett.
Well, you're making your mouth do too many things when you say it, Maude.
Am I not?
You're making your mouth do too many things. It's like this. Look, I can say your name like this. Maude Garrett. Your name's Maude Garrett.
You're
coming up next, Maude Garrett. Coming up next on the radio show, Maude Garrett, and she's fantastic.
Maude Garrett is easier than Maude Garrett.
Maude Garrett.
See that?
Sounds cool though with the accent. You're fine. You have an accent.
Maude was a big TV show in the 70s.
Yeah, that's true.
B. Arthur. That is three Maudes, which is, and you're 3 Hectors. No, you're 4 Hectors.
What am I for?
You just
one of them was a janitor in a Topher Grace movie. That doesn't count, Maude.
Okay.
That's not one that counts.
Okay.
So anywho's it, what's it? Finally sat down to watch Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. And it was a really, really great film. And it's a movie that I don't know how, really, Peck, that's what we're going to go with now?
You don't call him a little pecker?
No,
Peck?
I don't.
Peck? Is that an Australian thing?
I don't think so. No,
Peck.
We absolutely have the word pecker. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Peck.
Pecker. Not Peck,
but also
pecker.
Peck, pop culture reference. Willow. This is what happens when Rachel's not here. I'm putting it straight down
everybody.
To this.
Yeah.
But Peck in
Rachel's
Willow.
Usually keeping us on track.
Peck.
Uh-huh.
So you were sitting down with Gregory Peck.
All I was going to say was, I saw the movie and it's fantastic, and I'm glad that I saw it for the first time a few months ago. I don't think I'd ever need to watch it again, but I would probably share it with kids. It's another movie that feels like you would be forced to watch it in school, but like it's fine. You watch it, you're like, oh, okay, I learned stuff, it's great. But the soundtrack is beautiful. The score is a treasured American film score, and you can find it on YouTube, and I put it on anytime I would read a chapter of To Kill a Mockingbird, and it helps. It's got this beautiful, and the parts that are kind of spooky, scary, especially to kids, because they think that every house on their block is haunted and all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic. So back where we were, this book is often on a list of banned books as well, which I'm really curious about, and I want to know why.
I want to have a chat about that.
Is it because the N word is in there every other word? Is that why?
I have we can't do readings.
No, we absolutely cannot. If we do, I'm going to say the N word. I'm not about to say the N word. I'm just going to say N word. That's what I would say.
And
so we don't have to do readings.
Louis C.K. or listen to any of his stuff, it's like, F you for making me say it.
Yeah. F you for making me read it in my brain. Exactly. Yeah.
So my theory with this book being banned, I feel that this is so many conversations which people dust under the rug, and I think
I get it.
I've just finished watching 13 Reasons Why.
Sure.
So I've forgotten how to be happy for a moment, but what I've noticed is it's like there are really extreme things when it comes to suicide, when it comes to rape, when it comes to like that bullying in high school, and it's so often swept under the rug and not addressed. And I feel that in this era, whatever you want to call it, these are the conversations that no one really wants to have a genuine, balanced conversation over.
Do you think
just
that
so extreme in any way that it's like, I don't want to know the flip side, my belief. So to actually bring this up and have perspective, it's like, no, we don't talk about that.
To have an American Southern gentleman defend black people probably offended a lot of people, I would imagine. Do you think that there are still people to this day who will be offended by some of those themes? And do you think
Trump's
that that's why
president, of course he's going to be.
You're right. Actually, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
because
I'm Atticus as well in this. I want to be several part Scout and Atticus, where it's just like we all have bones, we all breathe, we all have the same internal organs, we're all the same. And I have lived in a place, in a surrounding, when it wasn't as diverse, and I'm not immersed in black culture every day, and I wasn't until I moved here. But at the same time, I've never had, racism is taught. You're not born with it. It's taught. And what I have been taught is to respect every single person as a human, that no one is better or worse. No one's, anything like that. So for me, it's like Team Atticus, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm still frustrated with Atticus for one thing that he did towards the end of our section that we read. But before we get into that,
a pushover.
I mean, yes and no. Before we get into that, just a little bit more background on the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. There was a follow-up novel, Go Set a Watchman, published in 2015, now regarded as the first draft to Kill a Mockingbird. I did not know that. Oh, that's fascinating. I need to do some more research about this. Java Book Geek Girl has a question in the chat. She asks, Hector, what are the chances you could put together a Spotify playlist for us to listen to while we read each month? I think that the chances are honestly not great, but I'm just going to tweet out what I find on YouTube, because I don't use Spotify because I don't like it, because I'm lame. I don't like Spotify. That's a weird thing. That's a weird. I literally buy and download music and I just do iTunes. But I will absolutely put out what I listen to when I read stuff. And if I can, I'll figure out Spotify. I'll put that playlist out there. But for this book, there's no playlist. It's just the soundtrack, which is from the film. And it really works.
She also, Book Geek Girl said in the chats there, it's easy to write off some of these things in the book as stuff that only happened back then, but a lot of those themes are still prevalent and real. It's reality today. Java Book Geek Girl, from my perspective, like growing up in Australia, I have an association that it is back then. I don't know America well enough to comment or have seen or really had awareness of this, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist remotely. I absolutely believe that it does, but I think it's so funny how it is, what's the word where it's like,
regionalized, I guess. It's specific to a region. Before we get into the first part.
Patchwork.
That works. Here's what I want to get into, a little discussion before we talk about the first section of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I'm super curious about what y'all think in the chat, and I'm super curious about what you think, Maude, but I have a thought, and I read this from a film review from a few months ago. I forget even what the film was, but I think it was like a controversial film. But the reviewer of this movie, and I'm applying this frame of thinking to this book, said that there's two ways to go about, I remember what it was Martin Scorsese's Silence film, which I hadn't seen, but in that movie it made a lot of people upset, and it was controversial because of how it approached. It came out last year.
Very, very long movie.
Correct, but also in the way that it talked about who was right and who was wrong, the perspective that the film took wasn't clear until the end, or if at all. Does that make sense? Right. So it was about priests in Japan, I believe, missionaries in Japan. So it's conflicting cultures, and so people were upset at the point of view that it took or didn't take. And the film reviewer said there's two approaches to something like this. A movie can either definitively, absolutely take a point of view and stick to it and try to deliver a message in this way. And a lot of the times people get mad at that because they'll say it's biased, they'll say it's preachy. And to that, I think, just a sidebar, I'm like, if you see something like Happy Feet and you think that it's preachy with environmentalist issues, you were really never on board with environmentalist issues. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, you really don't give a shit about penguins. If you're mad, like, oh, well, I want to see the other side. I'm like, no, you don't care. I'm like, you don't care about penguins. You don't care about the environment. To call something like that preachy, I'm like, but what's the alternative? Like, is a fair and balanced?
But I feel like those people are stuck in their way and they don't like change, and change is bad.
So going off of that, this film approach and then To Kill a Mockingbird, I believe that Harper Lee is taking the second approach that this film reviewer described, where he said that the other approach is to tell a story and almost get you in the audience on the side of what by the end of the story will be the wrong side, but to get you onto the side of people that you think, let's say, for example, racism. Let's say a story is about racism. Something, I don't know, whatever it may be. And the story starts and you're like, wait a minute, are they making a case for why it's okay for people to be racist? Why racism exists? Why people have these prejudices? Why these people should be justified in their prejudices? Why, you know, whatever. And then by the end of it, something maybe happens to that character, something changes. Like, and essentially, they see the light. Essentially, there's stories where maybe like they're trying to trick their audience into understanding this point. You see what I'm saying?
Got it.
So this film review, we're saying those are the two approaches. They take a stance or they go, you know, let me tell you what you think you want to hear, and then at the end, maybe try to change your mind in that way.
Because they're appealing to the people that need the lesson learned.
More than anybody.
And they're like,
exactly.
oh, I see myself doing that. Oh, wait a second. That's
exactly. To try to create empathy in a person. So here's what I'm struggling with. Harper, you're an incredible writer. I think it's a very well written book. I'm really digging it. I think her style is fantastic. I love hearing the thoughts of Scout. I love the molasses style rhythm and pacing of reading it in the South. It's all there. But I believe that Harper might be doing the second tactic, which is to tell a story about why it's bad to think black people are inferior, but she's doing it slowly by telling a story about a family in the South. They're poor. They're not well off. They're not well off. They're not okay. They're poor.
They have help, though.
But they're white. But they have help. They have a community. They've got their father, Atticus Finch, who's a smart lawyer. And then little sprinkles in the first 12 chapters are like, the first time I read the N-word, it cut. Because every time I read the N-word, it cuts. Yeah. And the first time I read it, I was like, huh. And they didn't go into it. And let's just move on. And I went,
when did she write this book, though?
It was released in 1960. She wrote it, I don't know when, and it takes place, what, during 1900? Like the turn of the century? 1910, 1920? What year does the book take place in?
She was born in 1926.
Okay, and it's her life, essentially?
Well, I remember the coins. This is my point that I want to make with the writing.
Sure.
You are left guessing a lot. You are left to fill in the blanks and to figure it out.
It's taking place in the 1930s. Thank you so much, Erin. Taking place in the 1930s, but keep going.
Because it took me 3 chapters to
realize
because
I'm like, World War II hasn't happened yet. I think the Great Depression is happening or has happened.
On the back of.
Correct, on the back of. Sure.
So my problem that I had, and this is probably going to go down a completely longer discussion.
Please.
We have done 8 books plus now.
I can't remember. It feels like 100.
A couple of times I have been really, really impressed with the opening paragraph. And I feel that...
You texted Rachel and I. You were very upset about the opening paragraph of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Doesn't make any sense.
Miss Maude, you were upset. You were like, it doesn't make any sense.
I'm just trying to tend to my flowers. And
okay. Do you want to read the first paragraph? There's not an N-word in it, is there?
I don't think so.
Cool. See, Harper Lee waits. She waits to hit you with that N-word. Hit us with that first paragraph.
So what I want to dissect with this first paragraph or so is that none of it makes sense. So what I realized with the Dark Tower.
Yes.
The man in... Hold on. How did it go again? It was infamous. It was famous.
Oh,
it's not infamous. Famous.
The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed him.
The whole thing is explained succinctly in one sentence.
It's a pretty beautiful sentence.
It
is pretty great.
Absolutely perfect. I am hooked. And I feel like, I think even Princess Bride told a lie.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking to a lot of other people about it, and they're like, oh my God, William Goldman, what an amazing writer. I'm like, okay. You get it. I didn't. I hate him. Shit. But other books, within the first paragraph, you get an idea of who the protagonist is, what the scenario is, what the purpose is.
Yeah.
You get a lot. Here, I don't know if you want to help me because you've got an accent.
No, you got it on your own.
When he was nearly 13, my brother Jem got his arm badly broken at the elbow. When it healed and Jem's fears of never being able to play football were assuaged, he was seldom self-conscious about his injury. It goes on, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the first paragraph, this boy
so
Jem.
Far makes sense,
you don't even know if it's Jem. Jem, it could
Jem,
be a ruby, it could be a sapphire. Jem.
We don't know that it's Jeremy
ambiguous.
yet. Sure.
The next one, you get the names, the Ewells, Jem, again, Dill, Boo Radley. You have no indication who any of these people are in conjunction with any other character. You don't understand any of it.
I'm not disagreeing, yeah. Okay.
And then it goes on to Andrew Jackson, General Jackson. Same person, we're not sure. Simon Finch. Who's Simon Finch? Don't know. He paddled up the Alabama. We're blah, blah, blah. We consulted Atticus, our father. Right, okay, that's the only kind of thing I'm getting. That
not yet. Even here, we have, so we consulted, well, the sentence is, I hate the sentence and love the sentence. We were far too old to settle an argument with here's the thing. This came out in 1960, right? All right, I'm going to try to read it in a 1960 woman's voice. Okay. 1960s woman's voice. This is my impression of women in movies and television in the 60s. We were far too old to settle an argument with a fistfight, so we consulted Atticus. Our father said we were both right. Being Southerners, it was a source of shame to some members of the family that we had no recorded ancestors on either side of the Battle of Hastings. All we had was Simon Finch, a fur-trapping apothecary from Cornwall, whose piety was exceeded only by his stinginess. Now, right there, I'm like, that's my terrible impression, but right there, I'm like, okay, Atticus. I only knew Atticus was the father because I had seen the movie.
Battle
but I'm
of
like,
Hastings, Simon Finch.
There's a lot of
Cornwall?
information, but there's
jumping to England.
I know.
I was so confused after reading the first page.
It forces you to pay attention. It forces you to pay attention.
Not even,
but
there is no hook.
Sure.
It is being shaken at the collar and being yelled at.
And you're just, and it's like here, it's like names, information, and you're kind of left picking up the pieces like, okay, Atticus, where am I going to put this? I don't know who this guy is. Until you get to Atticus Finch, our father. Okay, boop, and plug that in. And there's an improv rule when you do improv that they tell you to get all that information and the relationships out in like the first 2 sentences.
So you get it.
Because bad improv is, it's like, hey man, what's going on? That's the first line. And the person's like, I don't know, dude, I'm just doing this thing over here. Where's Charlie? He's over at the thing on the side. Let's go do the thing. Charlie's my dad. Like, and it takes like 6 sentences before you get to like what the characters and their relationships are. Well, that was a terrible example of really, really bad improv. That's 101 class and everybody goes through it and stuff.
But I feel like,
but if you apply some of that to this, it's, but
it's
on the
flip. It's as if Mrs. Dubose is reading to me the first chapter of this book, and the only thing that I can do is feel abused and wonder when it's going to end.
But don't you feel a little bit like you are a familiar to Scout, to the grown-up Jean Louise? What was the character's name? It's something like that, right?
Okay, that's exactly my next
point. That she's
point.
talking to you as if she knows you.
No.
Instead of being like, hi, I'm this person and this is my story. It's like, so let me tell you about, the people we all know.
It's obvious that Jem's language is far superior than a 6-year-old's. This is the other thing that I find really confusing. Your protagonist is so young, yet has the intellect of someone who's superior than my own. And that was a little bit, whoa. It also took me to chapter 3 to realize that Scout, or Jean Louise, was a she. So it's been so long for me to read this.
You got to watch this movie first, man. I'm telling you.
That's my point. So
big help.
And then it took me, I think, 4 chapters into this book to realize that the Radleys were white.
Sure.
And I was just like, oh my God.
Really? You didn't know that they were white?
No.
Why? How come?
Because I remembered Boo Radley. I thought Boo Radley was Tom Robinson. I got that confused.
Oh, okay.
Big time confused.
Gotcha.
Haven't read this book for like 16 years. Forgot a lot. And then it was me trying to fill in the pieces.
Jean Louise Finch,
and getting it so damn wrong.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
so
tough.
The first few chapters.
I imagine it might be the same as when you read Game of Thrones, because there's a lot of characters there you got to keep track of, right? No? Huh?
Thrash Odin.
Okay.
Ripping the first paragraph apart reminds me of being in 5th grade fighting with my English teachers to pick the
Here's something I want to talk about, because it's a high school like mandatory reading in the curriculum, okay? Probably in American high school still to this day. And here's what I want to go back to talking about before was that you have Scout, Jean Louise Finch, reading this to us, or rather, she's the narrator. It's from her perspective.
Yes.
But I get like a Wonder Years vibe, where like she's an adult, or like How I Met Your Mother. They're an adult, and they're telling us a story of when they were kids, and they just have the most insane recollection to be able to remember. It's helping, but here's the other frustration is that she talks about, again, those stories where as a little girl she hears the N-word and she hears people say her father's an N-word lover.
Yeah.
And then she kind of, as an adult, brushes it away. Instead of like stopping right there, breaking it down and being like, here's the thing, and kind of taking more of a stance. And it's frustrating for me because I just keep thinking, if I had a kid in high school, if my kid was black, if if I have a kid with a black woman and I have a kid who's mixed race in a school, or even if I had a kid who was Latino, they'll be Latino unless I adopt. But if I had a kid who was like Mexican, and there was a book that just had spick beaner, spick beaner, spick beaner over and over and over again, I would be infuriated.
I've never heard of those two derogatory terms ever.
They're derogatory terms. You know, spick beaner, wetback, spick. I would be infuriated as a parent. Even if the book has like a good message, I'd be like, can't you find something else to explain these messages? And I understand the line of thinking of like, well, we have to remember the past so as to not repeat the mistakes of in the future.
But if it's paving the path of the future.
Yes.
Like we talk about the weight of a word.
Yes.
And I feel like if to constantly have this coming back, to constantly continue that a weight of a word exists. I'd rather
not just the weight, Maude, but let me try to break this down a little bit. Not just the weight, but a book set in an era of white supremacy, and it's still telling a tale of this group of people and this community and how the community gets shocked by this black man who gets, accused of a crime and the guy who's going to save him. But it's still in a world, in a time where it is, and let's be honest, the time still exists today, white supremacy, where white people generally are the ones in power, generally around the world, generally speaking. And it's frustrating because it is a book that sits in that world and doesn't try to sort of break it down right away, at least. Do you know what I'm saying? And that you're gonna ask a kid in high school or younger to sit and live in this world. Probably the curriculum was probably created by some old school standby teachers of that school. Probably they were white. Probably do you know what I mean? Like probably the majority of educators in the United States are white. Probably all of these different things that factor into, I'm so frustrated because a part of me is like, can we just move on from this time and place? Can we move on from this word, from this, and that, it's not just the word, but again, just the time period that we're sitting in. But another part of me is like, well, we have to look at that and point to it.
Yeah.
And point to it and go, look at how.
It is a hard one. You can't ignore it.
You can't. I don't want to ignore it. I'm not talking about censorship because of that reason. Because here's the flip side. People today, even when they tell stories in movies, it happens today. As in an effort to not offend, they will ignore. In an effort to not upset anybody, they won't cast people of color as bad guys in movies and TV shows, even if it's sci-fi. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, well, don't do that either. Don't be afraid to offend, but don't, like, it's, I don't know. So there's a lot that I'm processing.
Real with you for a second?
Let's get real for a second, Maude. Let's get real. Rachel's going to be mad she missed out on this. And a great conversation in the chat. And I want to thank you guys for having a fantastic civil conversation in the chat. There's a lot of stuff here to unpack. I'm trying to read everything you guys are saying. Really, really appreciate it. Keep it up. Keep it going. Maude, hit me with it.
So this is something that is applicable to both the history and origin of Australia and the history and origin of America.
Yes.
And that is...
It was conquered.
We weren't the rightful owners of that particular land that was colonized. And I feel the reason why it is constantly being like... the past is being constantly defined within the present and the future. And I think, it is the N-word in the books like this, and it's, saying it's still okay, it's still fine, it's still, we'll still acknowledge and let it represent the future as much as the past. In simplified terms, way to fix this is to fucking apologize. Is to acknowledge, apologize, and in a unified force, agree to move on and move on in a way where we are growing together.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's not the job of this book. That's not the job of art. Art's only job is to be art. You cannot be mad at how people will interpret it. Because a point that I was trying to get to, and I think about this all the time, I think about why Dave Chappelle quit the Chappelle Show. Dave Chappelle quit the Chappelle Show because he was on set when they were filming season 3, and he had a joke that had the N-word in it.
Yeah.
And he saw a guy who happened to be white off to the left, a boom mic operator, a gaffing guy, somebody, laughing hard. And Dave had a thought in his brain. He goes, is this guy laughing for the right reasons?
Yeah.
Or am I continuing to perpetuate things that people can laugh at?
So this is a joke.
Yeah. So that's why he walked away. He felt responsibility to not do that. And that's crazy to me, and that blows my mind. And it's like, but that's not art's job. You cannot be, and the only reason I feel all of this stuff right now, tell you what, if we had read this book in the middle of 2016, I would have felt very different.
Yeah.
But now we live in a time and place where the President of the United States was able to win his election, if not aided by Russia, but based on a campaign of putting people down in hate. Yeah. And I keep thinking to myself, like, I grew up with stories that I believe made me a good person. I grew up with comic books and superheroes and novels and movies and things
where you can be better, where you can save humanity.
That I think I got them. I think I became a good person because of it. And so I've always wanted that stuff too. Let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, I wanted to be president of the United States of America.
Right.
And before you say anything, I was born in the U.S., so I could do it. Technically, if I wanted to, I could do it. But I wanted that dream because I wanted to help people, and that's a very ambitious thing. And then I realized at a young age, oh, all politicians are terrible, garbage people.
Yeah.
So then I was like, what do I want to do? I want to work on cartoon shows, because when I was 5 years old, cartoon shows, including stuff like Animaniacs, made me a better person, gave me a sense of humor, were adults not talking down to me, and I'm like, that's how you change the world. You get to kids. You get to kids through stories.
Yeah.
And you're able to teach kids not to be pieces of shit through stories like starring Superman, and he teaches you right from wrong.
This is where you have to subtly educate on the new normal. And the new normal is that, you know what, if you're a young boy and you got a crush on a boy, that's fine.
Totally.
That is absolutely
fine. The new normal
fine.
is that one line in Love Actually, where Liam Neeson asks his son, "Hey, do you have a crush? Let me tell me about her. Is it a girl? Is it a boy? Is it this?"
And it's just a joke.
It's a one line, and it's not a joke. Laugh, and he's like, "No, Dad, it's a girl. Let me tell you this." Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the new normal.
But it's okay to ask. It's normal to ask. It's not abnormal.
I think about the world we live in today, and I'm like, what happened? Stories didn't work. It didn't work on people. People are mad. People are yelling, "Build that wall." People think that black people are genetically more predisposed to commit crimes. I'm like, what happened? I guess To Kill a Mockingbird didn't work. It didn't work. But is it this book's job? Is it stories' jobs? No, you can never be mad, because it's just how people reacted to it, and you can't control that.
Yeah.
You know, it's all on a person by person basis. There's so many different things. So it's so frustrating, because this is a great book, but I also never want to read it again, and I never want my kid to read it unless I sit them down and I give them the warning, because this isn't a book that, when they re-released Tom and Jerry cartoons, they were super racist, but they didn't want to destroy those Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Right.
Even if they don't fit in the new normal.
How were
they didn't want to. They were racist because Tom and Jerry had a mammy character in those cartoons, a black woman who would run up and down the house, who was a housekeeper or somebody who, and her voice was very exaggerated and over the top. And when I was a kid in the 90s, they reran some of those cartoons and re-recorded her voice with like a modern African-American woman's voice, and it was jarring. You're like, whoa, like you could tell. And so what Warner Brothers, whoever owns the rights to those cartoons, did is they re-released them, they put them out on DVD, but they're like, warning, these are a product of the time.
Yeah.
And instead of ignoring them or editing them, we're choosing to present them in the way they originally presented, because there is a lot of artistry on display. But you need to know the context. You're not going to get that warning with To Kill a Mockingbird. That's not this book's job.
But okay, so if the majority of people that first came across To Kill a Mockingbird was through school, hopefully it is then the job of the teacher to educate it properly.
Of that context.
And let me tell you, my teacher in an all-girls white Presbyterian high school probably never had that conversation with me.
And then my other question is, again, I got no problem with this being taught in schools if and only if there's a balance. There's like books that are covered in curriculum that star black people or Latino people or people of color or people that or books that are more modern. Like at this point I'm like, if Harry Potter is not school curriculum, y'all are messing up, because it should be, because kids inhale that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, don't you want kids to read? There's good stories and lessons in those books, right? Anyway, my frustration is like, if there's a balance of like, oh, we're going to read To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to give you all the historical context, but then to balance it out, we're going to give you this book starring like a black protagonist, and it's super cool. And maybe there's issues of race in it, maybe there's not, but there's other issues, and then that's the balance. But I felt like growing up there was a lot of this, and there wasn't any of this.
Yeah.
There was a lot of this, and there wasn't any of this.
I honestly think that the PC culture, and I'm not slamming PC at all, I think PC is going, you know what? What we found to be a joke, what we found to have, stereotypical racism.
And even, again, published in the 60s, even published in 1960, there's a new normal to even 1960.
Yes.
You know?
But it's only in the last years where it's like, you know, hey, you might find this a joke, you might find this harmless, but it actually upsets a huge group of people.
Yeah.
And if it's not taxing on you to say it at all, like if you never said it again, it will not affect your life, maybe don't say it again.
Yes.
You know, and
I've had that.
all the slander. And,
I'm getting better. We're all getting better with that stuff.
If
every
you say
year.
the word with hate behind it,
Correct.
then guess what? Maybe you are racist or sexist or, you know, any of those things. If you're saying it with the purpose of malice behind it, but if it's done in a casual manner, I think that's what PC culture is just trying to stamp out.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
It's in the last 15, 20 years that, you know, I want to say the word because I want to make the point. But I remember in high school, I would say a sentence without any shame or guilt. Man, I got so drunk on the weekend, I was retarded.
Sure.
And that word in the last 15 years doesn't exist anymore. I would never, ever say that unless I'm using it for content to make an example of what not to say now.
Correct.
And you know what, you know, I think as well, like knowing that my brother has Asperger's, like anytime it's like, oh, he's like autistic, I'm like, oh, you'd never know who you're going to say that to, who would find it offensive. So it's just not worth it anymore. Anyway, that's my rant.
I agree. I think I'm like that with Chick-fil-A. I think I stopped going to Chick-fil-A. And it bums me out because Chick-fil-A was effing delicious.
I've never had it in my life.
There's some here in Los Angeles. But
I know, I've driven.
Really delicious. But they weren't they were closed on Sundays, which is cool. Thank you, Maude. Thank you, Maude. That's fine too. I think that's rad. But then it came out that like their owner supported groups that were essentially trying to limit gay people's rights. And
that's
I'm like,
bullshit.
my sister's gay, and could I afford to never
gunkle.
eat? You've got a gunkle?
Yeah.
I've got a gister? I don't know if that's right. I've got a lister? Whatever the thing is. A bister? Whatever. It doesn't matter. I can't. Labels are dumb. But I'll be fine. I'm like, I could never eat Chick-fil-A again, and I'll be fine.
Yes. No, a lot of that.
Fine.
I think it was Domino's as well was in the broil because like the president or the CEO decided to have
President of Domino's?
Domino's is at fault.
It was Papa John's. Yeah. I'm like, you leave Domino's out of this. I still eat that garbage pizza, and it's delicious, and it's so good. But that's fine. Even if you told me, nope, Domino's is bad, I'd be like, all right, I won't eat Domino's anymore. But
I remember Uber, there was a huge broil there with...
I got rid of Uber. I just use Lyft.
Same.
That's fine. Same. You got to vote with your dollars, ladies and gentlemen. You got to vote with your dollars. Ooh, that's cool. Thrash Odin says, my 6th grade teacher read us the first Harry Potter book. When it came out, it was the best.
I wanted to bring it back with casting and like, you know, what is good for the now generation. Lee Jordan in the books is the commentator. And you know Lee Jordan, he would commentate all of the Quidditch matches. He was actually a really fun, great character.
It's like the one black character in Hogwarts,
wasn't black in the book.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting.
So they cast him, and I remember being 14 when the first movie came out. I'm like, wait a second, don't care.
Sure.
Don't care.
Sure.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's look.
Is he good at it? Yeah,
I'll say this. I think that To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a beautiful book. It's so well written, and we can get into the specifics of it. And I think there's so much that's great in there. But I just keep thinking about how it's taught in schools, it's taught in schools, it's taught in schools, and that's just what I keep thinking about. And I feel like I would be fine with. I also just want, this is just like a critique on school curriculum as a whole. Update your shit. Just update it. I'm like, you can find some of these themes in a book that was written 10 years ago.
Do a breakdown.
There's fantastic literature out there. Novels, fiction, nonfiction. There's great stuff.
Do a breakdown of Martin Luther King's speech.
Absolutely.
Like that is a perfect like text to actually break down and get a solid meaning of.
Wow.
I know a lot of people have been commenting, and I don't want to ignore what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
And it's coming in thick and fast about what you guys read in high school and what books shaped your adult future.
Can we scroll up a little bit? Somebody had a comment about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It said that they had a debate in class. What is this comment? It's Java Book Geek Girl again. She's all up in the chat. To @Thrash Odin, I had a 6th grade teacher who read us Harry Potter too. Then in 7th grade, new school, I was in a class where we had to debate whether Harry Potter should be censored because it promoted witchcraft and Satanism.
I see this fascinating. Because like witchcraft and paganism is one thing, but in this witchcraft and wizardry, it's fantastical.
Of course.
Fantasy.
Oh yeah.
But I remember I had a Geek Bum contributor for a hot minute, and we all did our. What school did you get sorted into? And she says, I refused to do it because I wouldn't have a part of it. And
that's kind of bananas to me. Like anytime I come across people that had a very strict upbringing, religious upbringing or whatever their beliefs are, that had that aversion to Harry Potter in their young life, and I know a lot of people like that, that's kind of bonkers to me. Because I'm like, I'm like, y'all adults, just read the books. It's not like it's, you know.
Like the way, this is what is so amazing about the world and what we're discovering when, you know, an Australian is talking about To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Everyone's upbringing is vastly different from the next.
Wow.
Like every person in this room learnt something so different. And like for me, I almost feel ashamed that I have such ignorance with big chunks of American history and how it has shaped your country.
Sure.
And I'm living here.
I have ignorance with parts of the world.
Different,
I have ignorance with parts of the world. I have ignorance with parts of Latin America, and that's where my family is from. You know what I mean? Like it's because of your upbringing. How much difference one generation can make. My parents being from Mexico, my family being from Mexico and Spain and Europe and Central America, and yet I'm the first kid that was born in the United States, and I'm so removed from so much of that. Just for growing up. And I'm only 29 years, like 29 years, what a difference can make, where I'm like, bye, like I don't remember any of that stuff.
But is this when it's like, you know, you wouldn't feel that way if you knew about your history?
So, I don't understand the question.
So what I'm trying to say is this is again where it's like the past and the history of particular like events that happened. So in Australia, the Stolen Generation, it's like this thing where it's like,
oh, absolutely. Can I say something that's
from that to have remorse, revenge, reflection?
Yes, I also have. I feel weird about the Alamo in Texas, and I think a lot of people do, not just like brown people, but like a lot of people.
The Draft House?
Not the Draft House. The Draft House is fine, Maude. You can enjoy your movies. But the Alamo, which is in it's San Antonio? No, it's not San Antonio, right? What city is it in?
Is an Alamo?
I think it's in San Antonio. It's like in the hipster. It's in El Paso. Is it in El Paso? No, the Alamo. I went to it, and I didn't go to El Paso. I don't think. Did I visit San Antonio? San Antonio. Anyway, it's like the hipster. It's like the hipster city in Texas. But the history of the Alamo is a perfect example of perspective, because Americans are very patriotic about it, and Latin Americans are like, the white Americans who were there then were very ignorant and very stubborn, and they were fighting to continue to have slaves. And the Latin Americans who like controlled that area were like, cool, you can be here, but don't have slaves. And the Americans there were like, we want to, remember the Alamo, and fought to their dying breath and all died because they were killed by the Mexican army. And you look at that event and you're like, what in the hell? And people look at that with reverence and they go, bravery, so much bravery. I don't know.
What, bravery to fight for what they wanted? No!
It's a very interesting, but you go there and you're like, you visit the Alamo Museum and you're
another human.
Sure, of course. Mate. It's all perspective. And the way that I even learned about the San Antonio, thank you. The way that I even learned about the Alamo, again, even in my school curriculum, even going to school in Southern California was still leaning towards, you know, like, God, growing up in school was the weirdest thing. Every time, and people still do it the way they do when they talk about their sports teams. We did this, we did that. Growing up in school, teachers, the curriculum was always we, as in the United States. And at one point, my Mexican mom told me once, I don't know if it's because I said something or whatever, but she kind of like tried to like absolve me of the guilt. She goes, Hector, sweetie, we didn't do anything. The United States did things, good and bad. My mom said the same thing. You're not Australia. Australia did stuff, good and bad, but you don't have to.
I take concern, not necessarily responsibility, because I didn't do it directly, but again, I will not ignore and I will not purposely be ignorant to Australia's history.
Correct.
And it's a really, really important part for me, because remember how I was saying earlier, if you just fucking acknowledge, apologize, move on. America has this thing where as soon as you apologize, you admit fault.
Correct.
And if you admit fault, you can be sued. And it actually becomes a legal
thing.
Wow. What Australia was trying to do for a huge amount of time.
Obi-Wan Pez says, heaven forbid you admit you might be wrong. Yeah.
And this is the thing where it's like, you know what, all the people that are apologizing in this day and age maybe had nothing to do with the 30s back then.
Correct.
And it's just like, you know, that's why people now, it's like, my auntie is German. And people are like, ooh, German, how do you feel? I'm like,
I didn't have anything to do with that.
I was in.
I didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah.
We're moving on.
That's crazy.
You know, if you were directly that person that lit the chamber, you know, if you were directly that person, if you were that person, you need to be accountable.
Oh, yeah, you should. You
have absolute accountability. If you're related to that person, it wasn't you doing it, you're a different person. And I think that this is the thing where it's like, we're not absolving any accountability for it, but you have to say, There was a mass fuck up, and we, the people, are sorry.
Maude is looking for the word disassociate, says Obi-Wan Pez. Correct, yeah. And again, just to bring it all back around.
Well, I want to say one more thing real quickly.
Okay,
with that,
please,
with Australia.
go for it. Go for it.
The reason why it's so close to me, 2000 Sydney Olympics. So we conducted it in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And this was going on with the Howard Parliament. Not many people know about. Who cares? It's not your government. You don't know. But a big, big part of his reigning was that a lot of the people wanted to apologise for the stolen generation. The stolen generation being when white people colonised, and I think it was in the 30s and 40s, Indigenous children were removed from their families and raised with white families to abolish their customs. So they were it happened here as well, right?
Crazy.
So you're raising them as white people.
Sure.
And all a lot of people wanted to do in Australia was to say, we are sorry for doing that. And the government wouldn't budge. So there's a band called Midnight Oil in Australia, one of the, I think it's in the top 5 bands in Australia.
No big deal.
When they played at the closing ceremony, they wore sorry shirts.
Yeah.
And that was to deliver the message that Australians are sorry for the treatment. And I kind of wish that that could happen in a way in America.
Yeah.
Where it's like...
It does. I think that the conversation's happening today.
But there's still so much white supremacy.
Of course. Yeah,
we are the dominant race. White people are awesome. No, I'm not any better than anyone else.
Yeah,
so
but the conversations that are happening, and I was going to say that one way that people are disassociating but justifying that kind of stuff is, again, 4th of July just happened, the day to celebrate American independence from the Brits. And so many messages I saw online were like...
Should I have a problem with that? Because I'm technically of the British people. This is shit, man.
I don't know. Like, no, you weren't there. I wasn't there. No big deal. We're friends. We're living today. We're fine. But I saw so many people that were celebrating that day yesterday by talking about how, like, we have a lot of problems, but to me, patriotism is people. The American spirit is the most beautiful thing in the world because of its people and because of the good that can come from it, and because of, you can look at what happens in the United States and you can go, okay, is the United States racism? Is the United States the criminal justice machine that essentially enslaves so many different men of color? And is the United States drugs? Is the United States Wall Street? Is the United States the 1%? It's everything all at the same time. And I think that I had a point and I completely lost it. But I think that the thing that keeps me holding on to my patriotism, and I'm so proud to be an American, is when I look back at things like the Women's March that happened.
Yes.
And I'm like,
amazing.
That's America. That's America right there.
I have a feeling, again, in the last sort of 10, 15 years, and Australians' patriotism has gone a little out of control as well. Like, it was one thing to get a Southern Cross, which is the stars system in the Southern Hemisphere. A lot of people were getting that. And then it was used as an excuse, a tattoo. I'm proud to be Australian. And the same thing, in the American flag, the bald eagle, whatever it is, I'm proud to be an American. What I feel is happening with patriotism, and why I almost cringe at it now, is that I feel because religion, in a way, is losing its power somewhat. This generation,
unfortunately,
having a choice is much more of a thing. And
just as science progresses, sure.
And people are choosing to not follow religion so fiercely, especially if we're going to bring it back to the book, like some people do in To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel that they are using patriotism as their next excuse for their behavior. So before it was, God will punish you for your sins. God hates gay people. God frowns on your behavior. And it's like, no, you're just a shit person.
Right.
But you're using God and you're using the Bible and you're using religion as an excuse to project that behavior. I feel like what's happening now
patriotism.
is patriotism.
Patriotism
as an American, it is my right. As an Australian, we're fighting for. And it's like,
patriotism
you're fighting for racism.
It can so blend into nationalism, and it gets real spooky and scary. Like, it's really, really scary. And if I were to ever to get a patriotic tattoo, I mean, I'm wearing the shirt. I didn't plan for this today, but if I were to ever get a patriotic tattoo, it would be Captain America, because that's a fictional character who can never be corrupted. And even when he is corrupted, like right now he's a Hydra agent, quote unquote, read the comics, he's not. A writer will come along and wipe that away, and he will always remain. Does that make sense? Like, he'll always be pure. So, like, that's why fictional characters are my bread and butter, because I'm like, ooh, they'll never get caught doing something awful. We'll never see Mickey Mouse coming out of a limo, like, flashing his crotch, like, with cocaine on his upper lip, like, oh boy, that'll never happen. Mickey Mouse is tight, It's fine. You can, you know, you can criticize like the Disney Corporation, but Mickey Mouse is tight. You can keep liking him, and he's so fine.
Is that in itself a form of ignorism? An ignorance.
Of ignorism?
Shit. Don't fill my glass up.
No. How much more of this? Can we finish this bad boy? No, that's too much. That's too much.
I had a smoothie for lunch.
I don't think it is. I think that it's a form of
ignorance.
Holding on to something pure, holding on to something good. While
that's
still,
your hope.
You know, I love superheroes and I always will, but damn it, this world is flawed. And you can love and think of both of those things at the same time. You can absolutely believe that we have real world problems to fix, but also escape into fantasy worlds that make you feel better and that inspire you, you know, move you to tears, to then be able to have action in this world.
Is that why the president currently of the United States is almost a caricature? He's almost a character in itself. He was in pop culture.
He's almost, yeah, because he was surrounded by yes men at NBC that were like, you're great, Donald, you're so smart, and this is a great show. For years, probably, but that guy's got a lot of problems. He's got a ton of problems. All of them are symptoms of how he was raised and the world that he lived in. So just tons of stuff. But let's get back to the book. To Kill a Mockingbird. Maude, what are your first impressions of the first section? We got real deep in this.
I'm actually just not ignoring the irony of calling ignorance ignorism.
Ignorism.
Because that in itself is ironic.
It's a little ignorant as well. Yeah, it is. It is, yeah.
First impressions of the book. Look, in 2 minutes, let's talk about the characters and the plot.
Sure.
You've got Scout, you've got Jem. Basically,
Dill, I love Dill. Cute little kid.
Little kid. Gosh, what is it? We discovered it's the 30s. It's what town? I've never heard of it.
Macomb County.
Which is where? No idea.
Georgia, maybe?
I didn't.
No, it was.
Alabama?
It's definitely like Mississippi.
Mississippi? Cool. MISSISSIPPI. Thank you. It's Alabama.
It is Alabama. Right.
Yeah.
They are a few years apart. Their father, Atticus, is a lawyer who's actually a lot older.
Yeah, he's like 50. He's like 48. He's like close to 50. Sure.
Mother died 2 years after Scout's birth. Scout's about 7 when we're reading this. They have a game that they play together, which is to discover what the hell the Radley house is up to, because there's a few people living in there and they never surface.
They put on little plays, and then they start getting little gifts through this hole in a tree from probably Boo Radley. Let's be real, probably.
Yeah.
And Boo Radley's this mysterious, like, what's wrong with him? I think he stabbed his family. I think just leave him alone, kids.
Boo Radley
just in his
isn't
house.
Mr. Radley. Separate people.
Correct.
Great.
Yeah.
The son?
The son, yeah. But then Mr. Radley died in the section we read, right? Mrs. Radley died. Okay, cool. They never go out. Yeah.
And then you've got...
Moderator says, oh yeah, that's right, this is a book club. Yeah, but we like to get real, y'all.
Yeah.
That's right.
Such different perspectives.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we're both good people.
Who, you and I?
Yeah.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah.
Yes, we're fine.
I've never held a gun in my life.
I have. I fired a gun. It's scary.
I've never done it.
I think everybody should do it at least once.
Yeah.
I respect it, and it's like I don't ever want to have a gun, but like
people have made that argument to me,
basic
being like,
safety
if
stuff,
someone had it on you, how to disarm and then
but
take all the bullets
you're
out.
not Jet Li. You're gonna die. If somebody's holding a gun at you, sorry, Maude, you're not gonna be able to disarm that like a Lethal Weapon 4. You're dead. You're dead, and I'm dead, and we're dead, and that's fine.
But I've never been in a country where like the average person had a gun.
I know. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is, because it's a deadly lethal weapon.
It is.
And you know, any other thing that can kill people if you're not responsible. I don't know, like cars. Oh, you need a license.
Yeah.
Drive, and that's just transport fundamentally. Anyway, Miss Maude's in the book. Miss Maude's real rad. She's like 50. She loves flowers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a great sequence where Atticus Finch had to put down a rabid dog, which was intense. And
was it really rabid?
Yeah, but it was like a different type of rabbit. I buy it. And the kids were like so in awe of him. And there's a lot of, you know, my favorite character is Scout. I love this precocious, really, really smart young girl who can read and who's frustrated with her school that keeps telling her not to read. But what I'm frustrated with is, again, adult Scout who doesn't break things down for us as she's narrating the story, being like, oh, by the way, kids, saying the N-word constantly is real bad, but let's get right back into the story. That's who I don't like. I don't like adult Scout. I like little kid Scout.
It forms in conversation.
Just every other word. It's crazy.
But that was like me being like not familiar with this at all, going, oh, wait, again, was it in the last how many decades that it wasn't okay?
Exactly.
And was it okay, A, when she wrote it, and B, when it
was published?
Yeah.
Great comment from Java Book Geek Girl. My favorite line, because, until I feared I would lose it, I loved reading. I love to read. One does not love breathing.
Yes, I loved that line as well.
There's so many great lines.
That really stood out for me.
So many great lines. So
until I realized I could lose it. I did not love it.
That is the irony theory, yeah. Mel Gibson, Australian, stars in Lethal Weapon 1 through 4s. Yeah, so
Can disarm someone.
Let's get to our conclusions here. I am really, really excited and interested to read the rest of this book.
So
I definitely need to set aside time, and sometimes. What's that? You got to watch the movie. I recommend it, highly recommend it. Sometimes I will read our suggested reading all in one sitting, and other times I like to spread it out during the week. This is when I have to spread out during the week.
Yeah,
I got to read a chapter a night.
You've got a system.
I do have a system. I do have and it's going to help me because, again, reading it's just like molasses. Like as soon as sometimes, you know, Harper Lee introduces an idea, and then we're not going to get to it until 6 chapters later. And a part of me is like frustrated because I'm like, ooh, let's unpack that, but we won't until later because it's the South and we got plenty of time.
But also she does these things where she's like, you know, they asked me what happened, so I told him. And then it keeps going in the story. You're like,
correct.
But what happened?
What
happened?
Yeah, a lot of the times the dialogue's actually written out, and a lot of the times it's not. It's just kind of a summary. So that's where we're at, guys. Here's the deal. This is your homework. Here's your call to actions. Your homework this week is to finish up to chapter 20. Stop at 20. Talking 1 through 19, boys and girls. 1 through 19. Also, don't forget.
No. Oh, we've done to 12. So
okay, so then 12 through
less than what 12
through
to do.
12 through 19.
I'm finding some silver lining.
Have chapter 19 finished. You don't have to reread them. I'm just saying we'll have read 1 through 20 all the way through. So don't forget, guys, we are on Goodreads. Search Alpha Book Club and come discuss it with us. I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack in the book and also just in the context of the book, which is great. What's that?
Lots of numbers. Reminder, To Kill a Mockingbird is on Netflix. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. There you go.
Great.
Wait, is it on Netflix in the United States? Probably, right? Lots of numbers? Probably.
He's American.
Okay, cool. Tennessee, lovely. So come discuss the book with us on Goodreads. And if you're interested in joining us via Skype on the show, and I'm really, really hoping that somebody would like to talk to us about the book over the internet.
Yeah,
let us know
about the book
on Twitter with the hashtag @JoinTeamAlpha, with the hashtag Alpha Book Club, @JoinTeamAlpha, and Courtney's going to get that all set up for you, okay, guys? And make sure that you send us your book recommendations to @Nerdist, @Geek and Sundry, or @JoinTeamAlpha with the hashtag Alpha Book Club. And we will see you guys next time for part 2 of To Kill a Mockingbird.
I did like the fact that To Kill a Mockingbird was a sin because mockingbirds do nothing wrong at all ever.
Absolutely.
They just produce beautiful sound.
That might be a little bit of foreshadowing, Maude. We'll see. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.